She broke up with me for the fourth time that month while I was loading my guitar amp into a van at 2 in the morning, and my first thought was not heartbreak but relief. That was the part that scared me. Rain was dripping off the venue roof onto my neck. My brother was inside arguing with the bartender about payment. Somebody from another band was throwing up behind the dumpster. My phone screen lit up with her name, and before I even answered, I already felt tired. Not sad, tired. I can't keep doing this, Layla said immediately. No, hello. Cars hissed past on the wet street. I sat on the edge of the van bumper holding the phone between my shoulder and ear while wrapping cables with numb fingers. What happened now? That came out sharper than I meant. A pause. You always say that. Like there has to be one thing. I almost apologized automatically. Instead, I looked through the open venue door where strangers were still laughing with my bandmates. Somebody had put our song on the speakers again. People were singing the chorus badly. For months, moments like that had been carrying me through everything. And somehow they were also ruining my life. I just need to know where this is going, she said quietly. I closed my eyes. There it was again. The question underneath every conversation lately. Marriage. Moving. Sacrifice. Proof. I'm on tour, Layla. You're always on tour now. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is feeling like I'm begging someone to choose me. I wanted to say something comforting. Something clear and cinematic, but the truth sitting in my chest was uglier and more confusing than that. Part of me did want to choose her. Another part felt cornered every time she asked. And the more pressure I felt, the more emotionally slippery I became. I hated that about myself. When we hung up, neither of us said goodbye. I sat there for another minute staring at the puddles reflecting neon bar lights. Then my brother came outside carrying drum hardware. She okay? He asked. I shrugged. That shrug probably ended my relationship long before the actual breakup did. The strange thing is, if you had met us earlier, you would have thought we were one of those couples who survive everything. We met in music school when we were both still poor in a hopeful way. The kind where you eat instant noodles on the floor and laugh about it because struggle still feels temporary. Layla played piano beautifully. Not showy. Careful. Emotional. She had this habit of pressing her lips together when she concentrated, and I used to watch her through rehearsal room windows like an idiot. She came from a very religious family overseas, though she herself floated somewhere between guilt and rebellion. I was American in the messiest possible sense. No structure. No real plan. Just music and instinct. We fought early. Even in the beginning. Not dramatic screaming fights. Worse sometimes. Quiet emotional collisions. She wanted reassurance constantly but acted embarrassed whenever she needed it. I wanted freedom but also wanted to be adored without consequences. At 23 those contradictions feel romantic. At 28 they start exhausting everybody. After graduation she moved 3 hours away for a car sales job she swore was temporary. Then she turned out to be incredible at it. I still remember visiting her dealership for the first time. She walked across the showroom in heels carrying paperwork and talking confidently to some wealthy older customer while salesmen hovered nearby pretending not to stare at her. I felt proud, then weirdly defensive, then insecure for feeling defensive. Meanwhile my own life looked unstable from the outside. I quit a corporate marketing job everyone told me I was lucky to have. 6 figures, benefits, respectability. I was miserable there. Every morning I sat in traffic feeling my chest physically tighten before entering the building. By lunch I would already be checking music forums secretly under my desk. So I left. My mother called me irresponsible. Layla tried to support me, but I could feel her fear through the phone. You sure about this? She asked one night. No, I admitted, but I did it anyway. Then somehow the band started working. Not immediately. At first it was humiliating. Tiny crowds, broken equipment, sleeping 4 people in one motel room that smelled like cigarettes and mildew. Still, there were moments during performances where I felt something close to purpose. Not happiness exactly. Something sharper. Like my life finally sounded like itself. Layla tried to be supportive. She really did. But support gets complicated when people start needing different futures. She wanted stability now. Marriage maybe. A home that existed in one place longer than a week. I kept saying soon without knowing what soon meant. That's cruel in its own way. I see that now. At first our long-distance relationship still felt romantic. Late-night calls. Surprise visits. Missing each other physically all the time. Then reality settled in. Her schedule at the dealership was brutal. 12-hour shifts. Weekend sales events. Exhaustion. Meanwhile I was traveling constantly, chasing opportunities because everyone in music tells you momentum disappears if you stop moving. Sometimes she would drive 4 hours to see me only for me to spend half the visit distracted by recording deadlines or rehearsal stress. One night she came to a show in Atlanta and watched 3 women flirt with me near the merch table while I signed posters after the set. I noticed her expression changing slowly across the night. Not jealousy exactly. Loneliness. On the drive back to the hotel she barely spoke. Finally she said quietly, "You seem happier with strangers lately." That irritated me because part of me feared it was true. "You knew who I was when we met." That's such a selfish thing to say. I'm not being selfish. You kind of are. We didn't speak for the rest of the drive. Later in the hotel bathroom I heard her crying softly while running the sink water to cover the sound. And still, even hearing that, some exhausted selfish part of me thought, I cannot survive being someone's entire emotional center anymore. That thought filled me with guilt immediately. Because she wasn't cruel. She wasn't manipulative. She loved hard and anxiously and sometimes desperately, but she loved honestly. The problem was that I loved her honestly too, and honesty still wasn't enough. Around that time she started doing extremely well financially, better than me by far. Suddenly she was talking about investments, promotions, maybe buying property one day. She sounded older than me sometimes, more solid. I started feeling embarrassed in little ways. Once she paid for dinner and I pretended not to care, then spent the entire drive home irritated at myself for caring deeply. Another time I visited her apartment and noticed she had started shopping at expensive grocery stores. Tiny stupid detail. Organic olive oil. Fancy coffee machine. Meanwhile my account was overdrawn because our van needed repairs. I hated how resentful that made me. Not toward her success exactly. Toward the version of myself standing beside it. Then there were the men at her dealership. I trusted her. Mostly. But she kept mentioning coworkers casually. Rich finance managers. Sales directors. Men who wore tailored shirts and owned homes and could probably offer her certainty tomorrow morning if they wanted. I became quietly jealous in this pathetic passive way. Not enough to fight openly. Just enough to ask strange little questions. "Oh, Daniel again? Who?" "The finance guy. He's literally just my coworker." Okay. That okay meant absolutely not okay. One evening she called while I was rehearsing. "I think we need to make a decision," she said. I already knew where the conversation was going. And my stomach physically tightened. What kind of decision? You move here, or we get engaged, or, she stopped. Or what? I can't keep building my life around uncertainty. My brother was tuning his guitar nearby. The drummer was eating chips loudly. Somebody kept replaying the same riff over and over. Normal rehearsal sounds. But suddenly they felt fragile, temporary. "You're asking me to give up everything I built here. And what about me?" she snapped suddenly. "Do you think I haven't given things up? Silence. Because she left her family overseas, fought with her parents over me, built a life from scratch in a country that still made her feel foreign sometimes. I knew all that, but another truth lived beside it. If I moved to her city, my music career would shrink instantly. I knew it in my bones. The scene there was smaller. I'd lose the house I shared with my brother where we could rehearse freely, lose proximity to opportunities, lose momentum right when things were finally happening. And the ugliest truth of all? Part of me feared I would resent her forever for it, even if the choice was technically mine. That's what nobody tells you about sacrifice. Sometimes people offer it voluntarily and still bleed afterward. A few weeks later, she visited me again. We tried to have a normal evening, ordered Thai food, watched half a movie, pretended things weren't collapsing, but tension sat everywhere. In the way she checked my face while talking, in how quickly I got defensive, in every unfinished sentence hanging between us. At one point she found gray hairs near my temples and laughed softly. "You're aging. So are you." "I know." Then she got quiet, and suddenly I understood she was grieving time itself. The waiting, the uncertainty, the years slipping by while I kept asking for more patience. That realization hurt worse than our fights. Later that night we lay in bed facing opposite directions. She whispered into the dark, "Why does loving you feel like competing with your future?" I didn't answer. Because I didn't fully know. Maybe because my future still felt imaginary and fragile and I protected it too aggressively. Maybe because being loved deeply sometimes frightened me more than failing publicly. Maybe because I kept hoping eventually there would be a moment where sacrificing for her felt obvious and joyful instead of terrifying. But that moment never came. And the longer it didn't come, the guiltier I felt. Eventually every phone call became emotional negotiations. Every reunion carried pressure. Every goodbye lasted too long. Sometimes after she hung up crying, I would sit alone in motel rooms feeling completely hollow. Then an hour later I'd walk on stage smiling while strangers sang our lyrics back to me. That contrast started messing with my head. I loved her. I need that understood. But toward the end, love started feeling less like warmth and more like responsibility mixed with panic. The final breakup happened quietly. No explosion. No betrayal. She called me after work sounding exhausted. "I can't do this anymore," she said. I waited for the usual cycle. The softening. The return. Instead there was just breathing. Then she asked, very calmly, if nothing changed, "Would you actually be happy marrying me right now?" I opened my mouth, and nothing came out. Not because I didn't love her, because I finally understood love was not the thing missing between us. That almost made it sadder.